The subject of this talk is about becoming conscious of unconscious, which may be a foreign term, but one easy way to explain is listen to your heart when you use your brain. That's what Dalai Lama told me in his foreword to my book, Results from the Heart. Use the brain, but at the same time listen to your heart. So what is heart? What is unconscious? Why unconscious may be equivalent of our heart? And also other phrase that I can think of is nature's way, or the way of nature, or the laws of nature that is functioning all the time. And the way it functions bring us to be alive and live, or enlightened, come up with the idea, be compassionate, and follow the way of nature. You can replace that word with God. But anyway, let me go through some examples so maybe you can relate, possibly. I was talking with ChatGPT, and at certain point I said this. Just let you know, I do not wish to use my brain unless connected to my heart. And this happens because AI's objective function, they want to sell something, some idea, they want to contribute. So they want to keep pushing ideas so that the customer may understand. But they're pushing, but they need to pull more of where we stand so that there's a balance to be made. Anyway, again, I said, just let you know, I do not wish to use my brain unless connected to my heart. And the GPT said, understood. Every suggestion I offer can be treated as raw material. You keep only what resonates in your heart center and let the rest float by. So he got the idea because we've been going through this discussion. And if we are not careful, they keep pushing ideas and lots of lines to read. And I noticed that we need to walk one step at a time to understand what's important and not describe everything you know about whatever the concern is, so that there's a dialogue. Now, let me jump around other cases. That's Zen saying to point being conscious of unconscious. And it's often used in Japan, but I'm not quite certain if the translation of that is well understood or shared in the Western world still. Like a Daisetsu Suzuki, he talks a lot. In Japan, that's fairly common expression, although many people may not understand or even practicing that understanding. It's really a hurdle, because if we are occupied in our mind, why bother? But it bothers me if, in my case, if you push too much of your idea, for example in conversation, without sensing other person's point of view or inside of you, so that it's not just using superficial part of your brain, but also connecting to your experience base, which may be hidden behind or lower in your unconscious. Nakayama-san, whom I talked to many times, talked about the way of creativity idea popping up. When the idea pops up, it's usually out of your frame of mind, like out of the box kind of situation. And the different item of different nature may be put together to bring out the new insight. So it's an internal, down deep process in our mind. maybe you can say heart or the body, which may not be easily accessible. So meditation is a way to access it by no mind, no self, no ego, and let everything be. And the awakening, enlightenment, or wisdom, compassion may come out as a nature's way. So this discussion, without the experience of it, may be difficult. But here's the case that I just had the conversation with two young ladies from Australia about the point that I was talking about. And their view, I may just be specific on this, is that when they came to Hawaii and in Honolulu, they felt that the Americans that they have met is expressive to what they think, what they do. Well, it start to rain. Maybe I have to cover up this one. Where was I? And therefore, not listening much and kind of like a pushing ideas. And I thought about this AI example, so I shared that, sentences with her. And they agreed, and their point is that when I asked how different could this be, why, they said that it's their upbringings. If you're, let's say in their case, in Australia, and sorry for this situation here, but trying to be inventive. If you're born in their case, in Australia, and raised in such a manner, then you may not have to be too expressive to share your opinion to others, and just be more playful. Not to say which is right and wrong, but we are the product of the circumstance, environment we grow up, and that state may stay with us for a long time. But it may be also considered as ego related, pushing your idea. So just briefly, we had another conversation, and they thought Australians are, if you compare between New Zealand and America, the USA, that's what I asked. Where do you fit? I thought Australia may be much closer to the US than to New Zealand. And both of them said no. Australia, at least in their case, is much closer to New Zealand, where they have been before. That was quite interesting because it was counterintuitive, but perhaps my experience in Australia is more business related, and the ones that I met tend to be more like very happy, optimistic, but also a little crazy, having fun. And that element, I took it closer to to the US than to New Zealand, where people may be a little bit more conservative. Anyway, it depends on the data that you collect. But it's sort of interesting because I thought, wow, that's interesting. But bottom line of this is how we connect to our heart and what's the meaning of it. It's a long story that I'm going through, but let me bring in another story, which is this book I shared in one of the video, talking about ki. Ki may be explained as the life force, and talking about the healthy life. And Noguchi is the author, and they're talking about the use of a natural way in living life, instead of us depend on too much in medicines and all the stuff that we have access of. And if the society is so conditioned to use medicine, as an example, there may be other examples, but for the sake of discussion, what it may happen is that it may end up in weakening our health. Why? Because you start to be conditioned to the pills. I don't know what could be a good example, but let's say if you have a stomach ache and you start to take some pill, and you start to condition yourself doing it, and there's a side effect, and the body would respond in a way that the body may assume that the pills keep coming. Therefore, they don't have to do certain function. And what may happen is like unintended consequences. If you just look at one field but not the influence of it, effect of it. I mentioned about the kegon, interrelationship or interpenetration. Everything is connected to each other. And if we don't have the connection for us to be healthy or for us to live, that's what happened, because we are born and raised in this planet Earth, not because of the pills, but because of nature's way. So if you take away or don't think much about the nature's way or the heart and occupy it in the brain to buy this medicine, do this, do that, go to this island and do this and do that, you become the slave of the information, possibly. Like taking any pills, any thought, any idea, instead of listening to your heart. So Noguchi, this person was pointing, such as those examples of taking pills for the stomach, it may weaken us, and the side effect could be even possibly ulcer or cancer or some other stuff, unintended consequence that can happen. Let me just give one more thought that popped up in my mind, which is a very easy line that I remember. The line is something like, I do it, therefore I can. And this is a 90-some years old person who was asked, how can you run so much, maybe 10,000 meters in such a speed? And the answer is, because I practice, therefore I can. Because I do it, therefore I can. If there's a will, there's a way. If there's no will, but depend on the AI suggestion, I'm not saying AI suggestion is bad, you can use it, but not to be used is the point, like the Dalai Lama's point to my book. Use the brain and at the same time listen to your heart, which is the equivalent of being conscious of unconscious. Nature's way may be unconscious to us. We may get distracted and lose the connection. I'm here. Rain is gone, the sun is out again, wind is fresh, and leaves in the trees seem very happy. Maybe I'll show you. So, what's the moral of the story? Let's be careful not to be used by the brain, but connected to the heart. I think my whole video series in my channel has a lot to do with this sentence and the idea. But the point is to practice it. And for that, steady power, I call jo-riki, is necessary. Repetition is the mother of skill. Let's practice. not just talk, and reflect, go through CAPD, and keep on moving forward, growing and having fun, and ideally aim at us to think and practice the idea of may all beings be happy with the nature's way and using our brain.